How's everyone doing this week? This week we are going to show you how I did a basic setup for worms, which I inadvertently only started to compost and recycle food into more nutrients of soils. And I'm going to show you how I basically started. If you're interested in doing this on a larger scale, it's probably worth it to invest in the bulk worms from people. But if you're just doing it as a hobby or side stuff, you won't get started for cheap. This is how I did it. I had these totes left over from the move that we had, and this tote specifically is only about $9 at Walmart. It's just a 5-gallon tote. This bag of soil I got for around $10 at Home Depot. I originally had this bag of soil, and then in one of the 25-gallon totes, those long, larger ones, I just threw it in there, and then that soil, I just threw in 2 containers of worms from Walmart. Those cost me $8, $4 each. I'll show you. What you do is when you're going through them at Walmart, though, you want to make sure that you get one that's pretty lively. And basically, what I'll do is I'll just kind of give it a shake, and then I'll open it up, and you can usually see how much this is moving. And I'll show a couple pictures of some that you don't want. But the more active they are in this, more active they'll be in your soil. Because one thing you do risk is buying them kind of dead. But as you can see, they'll be in a good little worm ball. You can see how active they are in that, right? Our handy dandy bucket. And I'll show you the second one. So at Walmart, I'll just give it a little shake like this, and I'll open it up. Well, usually some will come to the top. You can see how active because you kind of disturbed them. But again, when you dump them at home, when you dump them out, you kind of want them to be already kind of active. You know, an active worm is a happy worm. But also be careful doing that. I spilled one time doing that. So I had to clean that up. So this tote, all I did with it was I tried a few different methods, and the one I found that works best for me is just drilling the air holes on the side here. Okay, so I just took a drill bit and drilled holes. I did along all sides. I didn't do too many because I don't want the integrity of the outside to go, but basically like 5 to 6 on the long side, and 2, or if you want, you can do 3 on the ends. You can do it however you want. And then basically all you're going to do is you can do it one of 2 ways. You can take this and dump it into a big tote and then put your worms in the big tote, and that's that. Or if you want, you can just shovel it into this tote. Okay, just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm also going to wet it down a little. And then we're going to mix it up. Just kind of moisten that soil. So kind of have a muddy consistency there. And then literally all I did with my original tote was took these guys from the original bedding and put them in there. And as you'll see, they'll start crawling down. Now, I am going to add some of my newer bedding that I'm working with into this. We'll keep this going like this, then we'll follow it and track it. And I'll show you each week what we're looking like. You can see the worm balls there. And even though it's as simple as that, then you just give them a day to acclimate to that. And then after 24 hours, when you're sure that they've settled down and they stay in here, what you can do is feed them. And when I first started, it was just literally food scraps. So what I'm going to do is, for this one, while it is this simple, I am going to add some of my new bedding in this and give them a little extra covering that they can work through. Okay. And it's as simple as that. And then we will peek in on them and see how they're doing and give them a feeding in 24 hours. Now, I do have some critters in the area. So basically, this is some bubble wrap, which you can buy in the rolls. It's usually like $5 or $6 at Walmart on a roll, or you can do how I did it. And basically, I just collected bubble wrap from packages and mailers I was getting from family. So I just took this bubble wrap, we'll put it on top there, and then as you've seen in my other videos, I did get newspaper and soak that. But when I first started, I literally just put a lid on the tote. And then when I focused on wanting to grow my worm population and moved to this smaller tote, I did a bubble wrap and a piece of cardboard. Okay, and then because I have the air holes, I just do this. Now I'll leave it off a little so that the light, because remember they're photophobic, so the light will ensure that they stay down. This cardboard is creating a dark space for them. And I'll probably just leave it like this out here because I do have critters that sense the worms because they know I have worms around here. So I'll just leave it like this while I'm gardening and doing my other stuff out here. And then later tonight, I'll see how they're doing. I did have one bin where they were not happy worms and they kept trying to escape. So I would put just a flashlight or like a mini travel lantern in there, and then I put the lid on there so that there's light in there, forces them to stay down and get acclimated. But it's sunny out right now, so we'll just leave it partially on, partially off, and that's how we just started our first tote. It's that simple and that inexpensive. So overall, it's probably around $30 for all this, but I'm going to get vermicastings for my garden. And depending on if you're doing food scraps or not, you're going to get more nutrients for your soil. And you're going to have a great ecosystem. Remember, you are what they eat. You want to kind of treat them like kings and queens, as they are. They will be providing nutrients for your food. You give them a feeding in 24 hours. 24 hours later. It's kind of windy today, so the sound kind of stinks. I apologize. This is the bin that we started. Cardboard. Our bubble wrap. Nothing's on it right now, but as your bin goes, there will be. So you can see it's nice and moist. What we're going to do, this is what you'd want to do to check your first day. See how they're all doing. Kind of mix up. If you're doing extra bedding like I did, you can start mixing that in. You can see they're looking happy. Not trying to keep them out in the sun too long. Mix up that bedding in there. Checking on them, I didn't really have too many that had escaped overnight. I only found one that tried to escape, but I caught him, so he made it back in there. I just try to keep clean up as easy as possible when I'm doing stuff. You don't have to wear gloves. There's nothing wrong with not wearing gloves. But this is how simple I was. In my first bin, it was literally fruits and veggies that there's two of us. So anything we don't get to eating, I was just putting in the bin of soil that had worms in it. And that was our food. But as I decided to kind of grow and refocus, my methods have changed, but I want to use this tote to show you guys and follow it and see how easy it is to just maintain. But take our grapes, and we're literally just going to squeeze it and break them open. When you research it, people do suggest doing a freeze. The water in there will expand and bust the cells. It does make it break down quicker. Now this is their first feeding, so I'm just kind of feeding with the ones that are already rotting and breaking in my container. But I'm not going to do too much on the first one, just because they're still new to this home. With that stress, just like humans, you don't have too much of an appetite when you're stressed, but this will know there's food there. So then I just cover it, and I think I'm going to take more of my bedding. Now, originally I never had bedding or anything. I just covered it with soil, but we have bedding, so we're going to take advantage of it. So this is just the core and the bedding that we have mixed. We have soaked it with moistures when we started building it. I just have a bulk tote of it, and when I have to make a new one, there will be a video on that one with how I've done it. And so I'm just going to use this as another new layer. And the original bedding was still kind of dry, so we're just going to pour a little water in there. Not too much, but just enough to kind of re-soak it. And this has core in it, so it'll hold a little extra moisture. Okay. And that is as simple as day 2. You just put your bubble wrap back on, put your cardboard back on, and that's that. And then we'll check in 24 more hours and see where the grapes are sitting at, and if the grapes are pretty broken down or they're hanging around the grapes and stuff like that, I'll probably add some of our grit mixture. We'll check in 24 more hours.
All right, day 3. Let's see how they're adapting. All right. No worms on our bubble wrap. That's a good sign. It's kind of windy again today, so just gonna wipe that down. Now, still in here. See where the last thing that's gonna be broken down is the skin of the grapes. You can see these ones are getting wort. The other nice thing about it is it added some moisture. See, they're in a feeding zone right now. So it looks like they're all adapting pretty well. Let's see. Well, these guys, and because they're new, they are like in the very bottom of this tote. My original ones, they were kind of the same way. They preferred the bottom, but as the thing grows, I'd find them on top more, which is not a bad thing. You just gotta get to know what your worms prefer, paying attention to changes that they act. Okay. Now, back when I started, this is literally all I would do for feedings. But now, as I've grown and I've learned more, I learned about having grit for them. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a grit feeding. And you can search multiple different types of grit. My original herd, I found that they liked the mixture of oyster shell, which I just grind in a coffee grinder that I've dedicated to my garden stuff. That way I don't contaminate my personal intake with garden intake. I totally recommend that. Just like you would with food, to cross-contaminate what you're using outdoors, indoors, with your own personal consumption. This is just a good quality whole rolled oat that I also ground up. Okay. Now, normally I have a jar of a 2-2-1 mixture. So for every 1 tablespoon of oats and cornmeal, I have another teaspoon of oyster shell. But the grit will help them grind up the food. And I never knew that when I started out. And my grit did pretty fine. But I noticed that once I started adding this in, they bulked a little better and they were just overall more active and like happier. Okay. So now that we got that, I'm just gonna mix it in. You want to be gentle. You don't want to disturb them too much or hurt them. So you don't need too much of a vigorous grip or anything. Overall, they are looking really good and happy. Okay, and then I'm just gonna cover everything back up, trying to cover that food that's left. And that is our first 3 days of our first week. We will follow these guys as we go along, and we'll be setting up a larger tote for the other crew soon. So that'll be fun. And that is how simple that first feeding, or the third feeding is, of the grit. I don't ever do it on all in one for new crews, just because it's a lot for them to intake as they're adapting to new surroundings. So what we're going to do is we're going to just recover them back up, bubble wrap, cardboard, you have the air holes, put the cover back on. And that is it for this week's video. We'll see you next week with a new one. Thanks for following.